Welcome back to NYSE TV Live. On Thursday afternoon, the House passed the Genius Act, which would create a regulatory template for stablecoins, sending the bill to President Trump's desk. It's just the latest development during Crypto Week on Capitol Hill, which is wrapping up today. Joining me now is Sheila Warren, CEO at the Project Liberty Institute. Sheila, thanks so much for joining me on this Friday morning.
Hey, Caroline. Good morning. Great to be here.
So from what I understand, Sheila, maybe you can break it down for us. All three of these bills have passed the House. One is on the way to the president's desk, though. That's the Genius Act. Fill us in on what this actually means for the industry overall, especially if these bills become law.
Yeah, it's a great question. We are expecting the Genius Act to get signed today in the Rose Garden by President Trump, who's committed to signing that bill. That is the bill about stablecoins. So these are three very different things. The Genius Act, which is the one that will become law very soon, it should go into effect within 18 months, is one that basically provides a regulatory framework for payment stablecoins. This is a subset of the crypto industry that is exciting because it's really the jet fuel of the entire digital economy, and we can talk about that. The Clarity Act, which just passed the House, has a bit of a long road ahead of it in the Senate. That is what's commonly called the market structure bill that really assesses which regulator is the regulator of record, the CFTC or the SEC. The Senate has already said that they have some fatigue around this topic. We're not sure it's going to go anywhere before September, so we'll have to keep watching that one. And the last bill was an anti-CBDC measure. This is frankly a bit redundant. The Fed's been very clear that A, they have no immediate plans to launch a central bank digital currency or CBDC. And even if they were to do so, they're clear and Congress is clear, they'd have to go to Congress for authorization. So this one I think we can see as a bit more of a symbolic vote than having any actual teeth in terms of banning, a CBDC, for example.
Would you say that Washington is finally catching up to crypto regulation, or are we still in the early innings, if you will, in terms of real regulatory clarity in the crypto space?
Well, I think we do have regulatory clarity now around stablecoins. But again, stablecoins are one piece of a much bigger puzzle, right? So stablecoins, and what was passed here was a parallel federal and state authorization, a regulatory regime around reserve-backed stablecoins. So again, these are very tied to the US dollar, which does not necessarily mean that there's the same appetite for things that don't have that peg and that aren't as familiar modalities to regulators and others. To me, this is a watershed moment, and we should see it as such. The last thing I think that was so exciting in this industry was Bitcoin ETFs and the approval, last January, and what that meant. And look, overall, I think what we should take away from this is that the industry, markets, and regulators, they're ready for pieces that have some familiarity and have been proven. Bitcoin's been around now for many years. It took a long time for that ETF to get across the line, but there was readiness in the market and almost annoyance that we hadn't done more, right? Similarly with stable coins, they're not threatening in the way that some other parts of the ecosystem might seem to be, right? As things get baked and become mature, you see the parallel path of regulation that comes along with it.
Yeah, and those ETFs were certainly a positive catalyst for the price of Bitcoin, which of course has been on a tear. We've been seeing Ethereum have a really good month too. I was just taking a look, up about 45% this month, about 12% off the 52-week high. So I guess the question is more around the sustainability of this rally and what you see as being maybe the next catalyst for movement here.
Yeah, it's a great question. So we're calling this altcoin season, expecting pretty bullish on altcoins. But what we've seen historically is that altcoins, they'll run a bit with Bitcoin. And then if Bitcoin has a breakthrough and hits a new ATH and kind of goes on its own tear, altcoins tend to fall behind. They don't really go together all the way, right? There's a little bit of a boost that alts will get from Bitcoin, and then you kind of see that fall off. For me, let's not sleep on digital collectibles. Again, this is a form factor no one's really talking about, but let's not forget Pudgy Penguins rang the bell at NASDAQ with SIBO. They had a SIBO ETF. They rang the bell at NASDAQ. A penguin literally was up there, which is pretty hilarious. So there's things like this, I think, that are happening in this space as well. Digital collectibles, we had a big NFT moment a little while ago, right? We might be back.
So what would you say then in terms of the long-term viability of the crypto space? Are you positive on it? What do investors really need to be aware of, given the fact that we've seen crypto prices fluctuate so dramatically over the years?
I think we're in a different moment now than we were 10 years ago. I've been saying for a decade now that crypto is here to stay. Digital assets, whether you love them, whether you hate them, they're not going anywhere. And if anything, you're seeing, as we see more of this normalization of the form factor, right? Things like ETFs. Everyone knows what an ETF is. That's not threatening in any way. As you see stable coins, they are backed by the US dollar. No one's afraid of the US dollar. As you see some of these more common modalities come into being and come into the popular imagination and become less exotic, I think you're going to see more and more embedding of this entire ecosystem slowly over the course of time within traditional financial systems.
So what's the biggest takeaway then for those investors who might say, I'm not in it, I want to take part in terms of the gains, but I'm worried about all the volatility?
Well, I think there's going to be continued volatility in altcoins, right? And so sector by sector, we have sectors within crypto as well. With Bitcoin, it's about what you want your exposure to be. And anybody, I think you've seen this already, that's well established. With altcoins, Ethereum being the granddaddy altcoin, the question is going to be, what's your appetite for that kind of volatility? Over time, some altcoin will emerge as the Bitcoin, if you will, or of the stable coin of the pack. And it's a question of what your appetite is for that. But certainly, I think we're seeing a lot of folks who quietly, the way they were with Bitcoin, they were very quiet about it for a little while, and suddenly they were loud. You're seeing some of that happening in the markets with alts as well. And we should expect to continue to see that to happen. But it's all going to depend on your risk appetite, as it always should.
All right. Thanks so much for breaking all of this down for us. Sheila Warren, CEO at the Project Liberty Institute.
Thanks, Caroline.